it is just an honor and a privilege, of course, to be in God's house doing God's work. But you handed me the CD, and the cover said "Late Bloomer."
Yeah.
And that attended to my testimony because Lord knows I was a late bloomer.
Ooh.
I was like a real late bloomer. What? How did that title come to you? I mean, tell us about you.
Yeah. So, I'm also a late bloomer, hence the title. And, I have been in different places in my walk with God, as I'm sure you can relate.
Oh, yes.
And being a late bloomer really speaks to not always being lockstep with God. When He has called us to do something, asked us to do something, commissioned us, sometimes we detour, take a few little side roads, and we follow a different agenda.
I call it the Moses syndrome. When God told Moses to go down and talk to the Pharaoh, Moses was like, "You talking about me? I stutter, Lord. I can't handle this."
Right.
So I can relate to that. So continue on.
You get to certain steps in your journey or a certain age, certain milestones that you reach, and you realize it wasn't all about that stuff that I was chasing.
There you go.
It wasn't about that ever. And you get in alignment, You're there vertically, listening for His leading, His direction, His unction. When you get to that place, that epiphany that happens with us as Christians, that's what I identify as being a late bloomer, when you get that wake-up call.
Yeah, I know about that wake-up call.
Yeah.
Now, is this your first project?
It is actually the first project under my branded name, Anita Faye.
Okay.
I did another project previously, but, as a lot of indie artists can relate to, different things happen and some things sort of get off track a little bit. And that's another reason for the title Late Bloomer. But this is really, I think, much more God ordained. He brought some wonderful resources around me to help me get this out and to really pursue the messaging and let people know, that God is real. Yeah, so it's mostly encouraging. There's inspirational songs. The title track that we just talked about is one idea, but the other concept is what you just played, which is Hold to God's Unchanging Hand, and the jazz remake of the hymn. We just flip the script and have a little fun.
Well, I like that because, it's not like, well, it's got to sound a certain way to do that song. You know what I mean? It's how God gives it to you to express yourself, because you don't know who you just blessed just now. But I got to say that I love your voice. Your voice is very rich. It's authentic. I personally have just this thing for working with individual, independent artists. I mean, because, we all dream about, getting signed by that big label. But if you know the business, that's not it. This whole program here is about the ministry.
Yeah.
And that's where I like the independent artists, because they're hungry and they want to get that message of salvation out. So that's what I listened for. In the first 3 seconds I heard it, I was like, this is going to be hot. So I want to applaud you on that. Beautiful project here. Now, where are you from?
I grew up in California. So
the West Coast?
West Side. I was raised in Monterey. And then I spent some time in Sacramento. And I actually moved here to Boston.
Wow.
Back in 2012-13, I spent some time here, and that's when I met my fiance.
Yeah. You got to snatch him up to go back to the West Coast with you. I don't know how you did it, sister, but it's got to be the voice. Got to be the voice.
He claims he didn't hear me sing when we first, connected and knew that there was something going on.
Well, my brother Robbie, he's an awesome man of God, and I knew when I met him that God ordained that. And I didn't know for what at the time, but it's starting to come to fruition now. Because he done brought in Miss Anita Faye in the studio live with us. And, I got to tell you, the project sounds phenomenal. And we know that God is going to continue to bless you on it. Now, what's in store next for you? Are you doing a video or what's happening?
Great questions. God is beyond our wildest dreams awesome. I'll put it that way. This weekend, being back in town, I actually have the honor, and I'm going to be very careful to use that word honor, of singing at Fenway Park on Saturday during the Red Sox-Phillies game.
Wow.
So he opened doors.
Did they win?
They did, 9-2.
It was the voice. I know it was the voice.
But here's what's really cool about this, Mark. I sang the Black National Anthem. So my rendition was the first time it was ever sung at an actual MLB event.
Wow.
And they honored a beautiful lady from Springfield, 103 years old,
Wow.
Mrs. Goodman, and her family. They wheeled her out onto the middle of the field.
103.
She's a huge baseball fan, a huge Red Sox fan, which is why they wanted to honor her.
Wow.
And so that song had significance, and just to be a part of that, yet alone to be able to say that I sang at Fenway